Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with David Strickle, the Stream of David, and this is your daily dose of happy. We're so happy to have you join us today. And David's, of course, connecting to us from Palm Springs, California, desert country. We're like in opposite ends of the continent, and we're sharing here on this continent the absolute insanity of election day, because this is actually being recorded on election day. We're not going to get into the politics or anything like that, but I did want to bring up one thing about it, which is there's a lot of angst going on today, no matter whose side you're on, no matter, well, even among people who just have no real strong connection one way or another. There's like this it's almost like COVID all over again. There's this angst that's hanging over people, and people who are talking about, I mean, literally, I'm seeing people online talking about, I can't handle today. Give me some advice on how to handle today. That's what's going on. It's
Very
crazy.
prevalent. People are really angst
Yeah.
about the outcome and the, not to get into politics either, but I don't think there's going to be an outcome today. So if you're really anxious about it, you've got perhaps a very long period of being angst, because I think today is just a start.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd say at least a day or two before we get results. Yeah. And it's just, well, it is what it is, as they say. But it's also a reminder for those of us who like to talk about and to practice being conscious creators, that no matter what's going on, it's up to us to decide how we're going to respond. And that's really what I wanted to make the topic of the show today. How do we respond when we're dealing with uncomfortable situations, especially those that seem to be societal? Because there's a piece of that says, well, if it's societal, it's outside of my control. I can't control how I'm going to feel about it because it's outside of my control. Except that that's not really true, is it? We always get to control what our responses are going to be. It's just that it seems like we really can't control it.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how much power you're giving external forces in your life. If you believe you create your bubble of reality, and that's what law of attraction is all about, and you fully trust that, then whoever wins the election is not really going to have much impact on your life. And I know that when I say that, it sets people off.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you say that on Facebook.
You can say that any social media, it doesn't matter which one.
Well, Facebook is just because of the interactive nature of it,
Right.
Pile on when you say things like that. But what about XYZ and all of this? And,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's been my answer. And I have lost friendships over that. I've had friends here in Palm Springs months and months and months ago, when I really started discovering that I had friends on both sides that I like and respect and enjoy in my life. And since I don't attach my well-being to the outcome of the election, I'm okay with them being the way they are, even though if I disagree with them. I have never met anyone that I completely agree 100% with on everything.
No, I don't think I have either.
Yeah, the person that makes the most sense to me on television is Bill Maher, but he's an atheist. I channel Source. So of course I have a big disagreement with him there, but politically he makes a lot of sense, because you can never predict what he's going to say based on his affiliation, which is obvious. And I like that he sees both sides of things and calls both sides. I like that. I don't want to sit and tune into some channel that, and by channel I mean station, that is just telling me what I already think and believe. I always want to see the other side of it and hear the other side of it. And I think that we've fallen into this trap in this country where we want to be soothed. We want to hear what we already think and believe and be soothed into everything that we think is right and our way is right, and that the other way is all wrong and that we're all right. Well, we know that the universe is vibrational, therefore it's gray, meaning there's no hard right and hard left on every topic. Certainly not. And most people that I know are all over the place with politics, really, but you have to pick a side. And if you don't pick a side, then you're against me and all of that stuff. And that's what drives people crazy. And then if you try to say that you're detached from the outcome, the next thing that you get is, well, you're privileged, but what about all this other stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Then there's just, it's a no-win situation. So I had this Facebook post months ago saying you can have differing political opinions and still be friends. In fact, I think it's beneficial to do that. Man, everybody was very polarizing. People came on and said, oh my gosh, can I share this? Because it was a post. the media people that I work with do these beautiful posts, and it was a post, and they wanted to share it. They thought it was great, but that wasn't everyone. Other people came on and completely lost it. How dare you say that? That's not true anymore. If you believe in this, you can't be my friend. And wow, it was just astounding. And I was blocked by people and unfriended by people. And I have people now that I used to see on holidays that I have not spoken to in months because of that one post. That's how
I believe it.
Yeah. And I still see the continuing, this angst from the same people over and over and over again. It's become their life. Saturday Night Live did a little skit, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, saying, it was all of these anti-Trump people, and they were saying, well, what are we going to do when he's not president anymore? My whole personality is based on hating Trump. What am I going to do?
You could probably create a simpler scene on the other side, because I know just from my experience, my background, by the way, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my college degree is in political science, and I've long had an interest in the topic, and I still, to a small extent, doing that. I like to kind of track the polls and try to calculate what's going to happen in each state and so forth, just because it's fun to do that for me. But I have definitely gotten away from the other side, from the which side are you part of? Well, I was almost never on either side, because I was a libertarian, but I've even left that part behind. And one of the things that gave me, having that background, is the ability to know how to talk to the various sides without making it sound like I am on their side, but on the other side, on the other hand, without making it sound like I'm against them, which is an art form. It's like walking a tightrope. So as a result, you mentioned Facebook. I'm on some groups in Facebook, some that are pro-Biden and some that are pro-Trump. And the interesting thing, the reason I'm bringing all this up, is that there is no difference between the two. I don't mean politically. I don't mean in terms of what they stand for. I mean in terms of how they're feeling right now. They are feeling identically.
Well, it's the sky is falling mentality that doesn't serve anyone, really. And it just serves a further division of the country, as far as I'm concerned. I'm 52, so I have lived some life at a time where, when bad things happen to the United States, everyone bands together and suddenly everyone's an American.
Right.
And the last time I remember that happening was 9/11.
Sure, that was a
9/11 was very
major event
for a minute.
Yeah.
Then it all went to hell after that, it seemed. I do remember that, and that was a good time. That was a really, really good time when you realize, okay, we've had an election, the prevailing party, it is what it is, and we're all going to go on, and we're all still going to band together and be Americans first, and not this division. And I live in California now, and I see people all the time saying, I just wish California would fall off into the ocean. And yeah, well, what's that going to do to the economy of the United States?
Yeah.
We're actually supporting a good chunk of this country right now with the tax revenue from the state of California. And it's not perfect. I complain about California all the time, but you can't suddenly say that this state is no longer part of the United States because it's got some wacky politics. And I don't disagree with that. The interesting thing about California is we have these ballot initiatives, so anything can become a law here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And people forget that, they treat California as a state, which it is, but they forget that if it was its own country, it would probably be one of the 10 richest countries in the world.
Yeah.
They kind of skip that part.
There's a lot of good stuff that comes out of California. Look at all of the technology and the innovation that comes out of here. Plus, it's beautiful. Yeah. But
it's a gorgeous state.
Yeah. Are you taxed heavily here? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, I've lived in lots of states. I was born in Texas. I lived in Florida for a number of years. I lived in California. I lived in Washington State. I lived in Georgia. So I've moved around enough to really experience the country. And I love that I've done that in my life, because you really see all of these different mindsets. I understand the Texas attitude. There's a whole lot of things I love about that. I understand the sort of laid back, chill, obviously the spiritual vibe of the California attitude is cool too.
Sure.
Plus and minuses to all of it, for real. There is. And I even, as crazy as Florida can be, I enjoyed my time in Florida. I had a really good life in Florida.
Florida was actually one of our most recent vacations, to be honest. We went on vacation last year and visited my brother and sister-in-law. They live in Florida, and we had a great time. Florida was wonderful. I couldn't have asked for a better place to visit. So yeah, I'm with you.
Well, it's very melting pot, because I grew up in the South, and people think Florida is the South, and Florida is nothing like the South.
No, it's quite different.
transplants from all over the place and Native Floridians all mixing together to create this amalgam of crazy and fun and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So you can find things to like or dislike anywhere you live. Again, we create our bubble of reality via law of attraction. And I remember in the 2000 election, I lived in Florida, the contested election, and I was with somebody at the time that was very into politics, and he thought the world was just going to end because George W. Bush was elected president. He thought the world was going to end. And
I thought you said he was going to end. I thought you were going to say that he thought the world was going to end because of hanging chads, but I guess it's the same thing.
Well, no, it felt like it in Florida for a while. Everywhere else, you know, that election. I hope we don't see that. Just
right.
But that was a big turning point for me. That's when I really amped up my own law of attraction practice in 2000 and said to myself, the outcome of this election is not going to dictate my life.
No.
That's me if I allow that to be. And for the next 8 years, Bush was president, and my life went great while Bush was president. And then we rolled right into a severe recession. I said the same thing about the recession. I'm not participating in this recession. My life was great during the recession, mostly. I earned more money year after year after year after year in a declining business during the recession. The element that I didn't like is that a big part of my job was I was downsizing people all over the country. So I would fly in, fire a bunch of people I never met, and fly away, and it was horrible. I didn't like that part of it. But personally, my bubble of reality, as far as my life and my home and my finances and all that, I did fine during the recession because I chose not to participate in that aspect of it. Whereas people were, you know, again, it was the sky is falling, it's awful. And you feel bad for people that think that, but you try to talk about this stuff to them and they don't want any part of it. That's crazy. That's nuts. There's no such thing as law of attraction. It's all BS. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go get my Mercedes and drive back to my 4,000 square foot house with my job and my income. And you say it's all BS while you're figuring out how you're going to make a living.
You know? I'll tell you what, I had the opposite experience during that time because I didn't really understand how any of it worked. I had been exposed to The Secret, but I was exposed to it 2 months after the financial crisis hit, which is a little bit late to try to learn this stuff if you're going to try to.
Well, I was already a practitioner well into all of it.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I'd had that information. And what I went through was diametrically the opposite. I went through hell. Absolute hell. So to any person, if any of those people who come to you to say, you know, all this stuff is baloney, I mean, regardless of what happened in your life, it's all baloney, send them to me. I'll tell them what it's really like, because I learned the hard way just how true it is that when you focus on what you don't like, you get what you don't like, because I got it in spades. And I got it year after year after year.
There was a woman that worked in one of my locations that she was every day, she was like copying the sky is falling news article of the day on everyone's desk. And we had to tell her to stop. Well, this is news. You can't stop me from sharing news. Well, not everybody wants to see that. You know, people were there in commission sales, not wanting to look at that. And I can tell you, I had people in commission sales never lost a dime in business during the recession, even though our business plummeted.
Wow.
It's amazing to see. That was one of the things that really helped me in that career field, was having that bird's eye view of hundreds of commission salespeople and seeing a tiny handful that thrive no matter what, and seeing everyone else with all of their excuses.
Yeah, that's a big experience right there. Just seeing that has got to have a tremendous impact on your own ability to believe what you already believed, but to kind of reinforce it so that you really, really know it. Because I think that's probably the hardest thing that happens. We get exposed to how this stuff works. Maybe to some degree or another, we try it out. Maybe we're successful. Maybe we're not. Maybe we end up focusing like, I did too much on stuff that we don't like. We get a whole bunch more that we don't like, and we get frustrated. But maybe we actually start picking some stuff up. But never during that early process do we most of us anyway have the experience of seeing what happens when you have a whole bunch of people who are believing in themselves, who are believing in good things happening to themselves, and then experiencing it during a downtime. I mean, I don't know how to describe how valuable that is. If I'd had that experience, I would have had an entirely different 2000s experience.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
It's funny. I just got through reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you've read that book. It's a great book. Got a little bit of law of attraction woven into it. In fact, he even references Think and Grow Rich toward the end. And I read between the lines. I thought it was a very, I agreed with all of it. I loved the message in the book. Mm-hmm. And it's true that right now, you know, the economy, even though we've had all of this going on with COVID, the economy is still relatively okay.
It's hanging in, yeah.
Stock market's certainly doing well, but there is a section of our society that is salivating for a real estate crash and a stock market crash and a huge recession, because that's when they really make their money.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so that's a whole different mindset. So if you're operating where you're living in fear of the next recession, understand that you are going to create your own reality with that.
And simultaneously, there's a whole collection of people who've lost their jobs and who are feeling despondent and aren't sure how they're going to pay the rent. And many of them are actually probably facing what some of your clients have faced, where they were homeless and just, you know, drifted at sea and didn't have any sense of how they could ever climb out of anything like that. And it's all happening at the same time. That's the thing I also like to remember. There is no such thing as one economy. Especially in a country this big, there are 330 million economies.
Yeah, it's like everything else. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
The reason the economy goes bad is because the collective fear bubbles up to the level of everybody starts selling off, businesses start cutting employment, and then suddenly, you have your recession. But it was all created via fear in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's go. Let's do a little tire work here. Let's go to the idea of, all right, I'm recognizing that I at least play a role. I won't say that I'm playing the role of somebody who actually totally believes, but I'm willing to shift. I've been experiencing difficulties financially. Maybe I lost my job. Maybe I got downsized, something like that. And I'm not really sure what's going to happen next, but I'm willing to kind of buy into it. Okay, I'm seeing the value of it. So let's kind of talk through, what do we do now? We're in this kind of netherworld. Okay, I'm willing to believe, but what do I do?
Yeah, well, the Taya is a mindset first. It's a mindset practice. So Taya is all about understanding vibrational flow. We're all operating in vibrational flow, and our vibrational flow is impacted by planetary alignment, polarity. It's very much what astrology is rooted in, except astrology is making assumptions that because of your birth year and date and all of that, that your polarity is going to dictate X, Y, Z. And I think via the law of averages, there's some truth in that study, certainly. But there's a lot of other things that play in your life. If you take that and layer it into law of attraction, which is our vibration is up and down all the time. And sometimes it's due to just plain old polarity. And sometimes our vibration is down because of our thoughts. When we have triggers, and we all have triggers that we develop because we get hurt in life and our ego builds this little wall. I call it the never again wall, that's going to stop us from experiencing that pain again in the future. That little never again wall actually creates what I call an abundance block. Somebody starts a business early on and they get burned, and their ego says, well, you don't ever want to do that again. You don't want to, start this business, make a fool of yourself to your family. Now you owe people money. Now you've got to go get a job. It was a very painful experience. So you're never going to start a business again. Boom, abundance block. And now you're being employed by somebody else for the rest of your life, even though your true desire was to start a business. This is just an example. Of course, you've got an abundance block rooted somewhere. So in Taya, it's not just focus on what you want. Just focus on what you want and you're going to get everything that you want. That's 100% true. Taya, we go a lot deeper than that, though, because what I found after reading The Secret and following some other teachings out there, that wasn't enough for me, because I could meditate and I could, read some books and get really up there and start creating this life that I wanted. The money and material part came very easy to me. I figured that out very early on. But I also thought that money and material things was the answer, was happiness. And then it took me until I was 40 years old to discover that, wait a minute, I have all this nice stuff and I'm still not really happy. I've got other things. That's when I got deeper into law of attraction, because I understood how it worked, but I had applied it in one area and nowhere else. And so I wanted to start fixing the other stuff. So I realized I've got demons. I've got transgressor energy. I've got, my father left when I was 6. My mother was very detached from my childhood. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel worthy as a child. Then when I was 24, I told my mother I was gay. She never spoke to me again for the rest of my life. those are big markers of dark energy that are transgressor energy in my life. And those things created branches, and these branches created triggers. So polarity may have my vibration up here. Something came along that reminded me of abandonment or something of that nature. Boom, my vibration's down. So that whole idea of being up in high vibration and just thinking about what I wanted, that worked great up here. But when I'm down here, triggered down by something and hearkening back to painful memories and hitting that never again wall, then suddenly I've got my abundance block. And I had that in several areas. I started a business at 19, and though I learned a lot and never regretted starting it, ultimately I wasn't successful. Then I got into being employed, and I became very successful being employed and stayed in that space for 20 years, but I was never happy in that space. So I had that never again wall about starting my own business. I had to remove that wall to quit my job and start my own business, and then everything was fine. So you've got to face your demons. You've got to get over your abundance blocks first to start allowing yourself to be able to control your vibration, meaning keeping it a little higher and a little higher and a little higher, getting into more of what we call detuning fear, detuning judgment. And when you detune fear and judgment, it's like this. You have fear and judgment over here, and you have trust over here. Well, when you detune fear and judgment, your ability to trust goes up, because you're not having fear and judgment-based thoughts that trigger you down anymore. So the more you trust the universe to deliver everything that you want, the more that comes to be your reality. But then when you go even deeper into understanding the nature of positive and negative and the reason that we have this vibrational flow in the first place, that you're never going to solve. We go really deep into that in Taya. You're never going to solve vibrational flow, because vibrational flow creates this constant expansion via unwanted things, obstacles, storms, disasters, natural disasters, financial disasters, health crisis, all these things that flow into our reality. And we have a choice to allow that to undo us or to overcome it. And when we overcome it, we create something new in overcoming it. We expand. That collective expansion actually expands the whole universe. So when you start to appreciate vibrational flow and begin appreciating your obstacles, the perfection of imperfection, as the stream says, then all of a sudden you're not judging your obstacles the same. And when you're not judging them the same, suddenly you're able to react to them positively. I will never forget when the first year I was in business for myself, I had my nest egg, completely self-financed business, jumped out of the airplane, left a very high paying job, no plan, not a ton of savings really, and started, with a book and a podcast, and started a coaching business at the time. And my money started to run out, and I started to get worried about my money running short.
Sure.
Because I believe in abundance, I didn't really change my lifestyle that much. I moved into $1 million home. I was still driving a car. That's just what I was used to doing. I have a brand new business. Why not go rent $1 million home? It was crazy, right? So I did that. And when the money started running out, I started getting a little worried about money. I'm like, God, here I am teaching abundance, and I have this little nagging thing. Hey, your money's running out. What are you going to do when your money runs out? I need to detune that voice. Well, it got down and down and down. And then all of a sudden I enrolled somebody in my course who turned out to be fraudulent. That was a whole bad thing that really sort of took me down. And then I kind of stayed down in this low vibe for a little bit, until one day I went to my mailbox and I opened it up, and there was a lovely letter from the IRS. It's never good news, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I just laughed. I said, here is my next piece of evidence of my vibration. I had the fraudulent person come into my program, and now I have this. The universe is saying, here's another little sign that this is what your vibration is right now.
Which is a big deal. Noticing that, you actually noticed what very often people would not notice.
Well, the first one I realized, okay, how did I attract this person into my life that did this to me? And then I detuned all of that. And then that letter came, and then I realized, I detuned her, but I haven't detuned the worrying about money. And so sure, I'm going to get a tax bill from the IRS from 2 years ago, that I've got to go fight. So that, I just laughed. That was the bounce up for me though. When I saw that and laughed, I realized I cannot worry about money anymore. I haven't had that problem again.
Mm.
I bottomed out and went right back up, and everything's been great. And this is, 2 years now. So, I had to teach myself my own lesson, because I had always never had a problem with money. And I had to manifest that money problem so I could be empathetic toward people who are coming to me saying, I want to take your program because I want to learn how to manifest money. To me, it was sort of like, well, I've been able to do that since I was a teenager. That's easy. Well, to them, it wasn't. Now I have more empathy for that person coming into my
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's like we manifest these little lessons for ourselves that ultimately make us better at whatever we're focusing on being better at. So that's why we have obstacles, to expand because of the obstacles. So now you don't fear your obstacles anymore. You don't fear the next recession. You don't fear the result of the election. You understand that if people choose to lose their minds over whatever happens in these next few days, that doesn't have to impact me. And unfortunately, from a human perspective, everybody's here having their own experience. And Taya can sound very selfish because we are focused on creating our own bubble of reality. But if I don't create a positive bubble of reality and share these tools with the world, what good am I with this information? So if I can share these stories and help someone else not be so freaked out about the result of an election, understanding that whatever the outcome is, first of all, doesn't have to impact you, and coming to the realization that we're not here to save the world from itself. And that's where a lot of people really go down their spiral regarding politics. Okay, you're great, but what about this group of people over here that are going to be oppressed? Or what about this group of people over here that are going to have this happen? And wrapping your head around, we have more to offer those people from a high vibrational perspective. And every soul is here having its own experience. And we're not here to judge that. And my experience is not perfect. That's why I don't put myself out there as I'm here teaching and I'm perfect. I don't have any problems. Somebody asked the stream one time, if anything's possible, why doesn't David grow hair on top of his head? I love that question. She actually asked that to the stream. And I don't remember what their answer was, but my answer is I'm fine with being bald. And I don't put myself out there as being perfect. And I don't want to come off as perfect, because I know people that put themselves on Instagram as perfect. Their lives are disasters in the background. They put this image out there of something that's not real. I'd rather say, hey, there's no perfection, but you can raise your vibration. You can thrive no matter what's happening in the world around you. And don't you have more to offer from a high vibration perspective of being okay no matter what and trusting the universe than you do getting down in the muck and saying, oh my God, it's terrible. I can't believe this is happening to those people. It's going to be awful for me and it's going to be awful for you. And oh, it's terrible. And we hear that. And then so often all of that sky is falling stuff doesn't even come to be.
Which is amazing, especially considering what we know about the law of attraction. It's just like unbelievable.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, why do you believe what any politician is telling you? They're all saying what they need to say to get elected. And then once they get elected, they kind of do what they're going to do anyway, no matter who it is. So,
that is true. They do.
Yeah.
I love also the fact that in your Taya teachings, you emphasize the polarity part of it, as you're calling it, or what we often call contrast, or just in basic layman's terms, focusing on a whole bunch of stuff we don't like. And I mentioned that because, yes, I mean, we certainly aren't perfect. And yes, we certainly are going to experience that because that's part of life. But there's also another piece to it. And I think the people who get caught up in politics are a great example of this other piece. And that is, we choose it. We got to recognize that we spend a large chunk of our lives choosing stuff that we don't like, choosing to focus on, choosing to throw energy at it, to throw dollars at it, to throw time at it. I mean, the most activist type political person is somebody who's choosing to spend large chunks of their life focused on what they don't like. Yeah. And the interesting part is, if you actually ask that person, I like playing this little game sometimes. This is actually something that I do, and I'll just share this with you and the audience. We'll just keep it among ourselves because I don't like to spread it around too much. But I like to mess with people sometimes. And one of the ways that I like to mess with them is to just ask them one little question if I know that they are very politically activist oriented. That question is this: can you tell me what you're in favor of without telling me what you're against? And inevitably, they will tell me what it is they're against that they want to stop. And then I'll say, that's great, but that's not what I asked for. What I asked for is, can you tell me what you're in favor of without referring to what you're against? And you can just see the gears stripping as they're trying to find a way to answer that, because they're not used to thinking that way.
Yeah.
And to me, that just demonstrates so clearly how people go all out focusing on what they don't like, to the point where they're almost oblivious to the fact that there's actually stuff they do like.
Well, I think about these news channels that are politically slanted, and there's more now. When I was a kid, I don't remember such things. It's kind of like the news was just the news, and it was just the news.
It was slanted, but not nearly like it is today.
I don't recall thinking it was necessarily slanted. It just seemed like it was just reporting when I was a little kid, like Walter Cronkite.
Walter Cronkite, he's like the standard, the gold standard.
I remember Walter Cronkite. He was a boring old man, but he was just a talking head reporting the news without emotion, and that's what I thought news was supposed to be. And I think maybe originally that's what it was supposed to be. And then it turned into entertainment, and now it's just about telling you what you're supposed to be afraid of. And you hear buzzwords that people use on all sides, and that they're speaking almost from programming. They've been told that this is what they're supposed to be against, and they're out there using the buzzwords of whatever it is they're supposed to be against. I see that a lot.
Yeah, and what you're saying is true. The one thing I'd want to point out, though, is that the era of Walter Cronkite was actually more of an exception than the rule. Because if you go back a few years before that, say to the beginning of television or to the radio era, you'll find a lot of the famous personalities who were associated with news were very slanted. That was just, they were the Edward R. Murrows of the world.
Yeah, that was like more editorial type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was like ever present. That was everywhere. I mean, it was in the newsreels. It was in the radio programs. It was in the newspapers. It was all over the place. So, I mean, the idea of slanted news is actually nothing new. Sorry, President Trump. It really is not a new thing at all. It's been around for a long time. Anyone who's ever studied the history of politics in America, all you have to do is go back to the 19th century. You can find some pretty darn slanted newspapers, let me tell you. Yeah. But there was that era.
Somebody wants to create a Taya game, and I think it's a great idea. And to teach people Taya, but it's funny because she was talking about the game of life and how the game of life was this propaganda piece to teach people how you're supposed to live the templated middle class life, that you're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to go get a secondary education, you're supposed to go work for a company, you're supposed to buy this many, this kind of house and this many cars and have this many kids. And it was really telling you what your life was supposed to be. And I don't remember playing the game of life. I always loved Monopoly. Monopoly was my game as a kid. Again, I thought money was the answer to everything as a child. Well, the people around me that had money seemed pretty happy. The kids around me that had money and went to Disney World and went on ski trips and got new clothes, and when they were teenagers, they had cars. They seemed pretty happy to me. And we didn't have all that stuff. So I remember thinking that's happiness. And then I got into my teen years in 20s and 30s, and that's what I focused on. But then I did get to a point where I realized this still isn't happiness. There's something that's missing here. So that's why Taya isn't just about money. Taya is about the whole person and really understanding universal law and vibrational flow, really understanding soul purpose. We get deep into that. So it is deeper than typical law of attraction teaching, but I couldn't reconcile really applying law of attraction to every area of my life without a spiritual component to it. I couldn't, there was just no avoiding that. But what turned me off to spirituality was all of the fairy dust, the rainbows and the unicorns and all of that end of it was a turn off to me. And I'm still really not that into all of that. I mean, I love the power of positive thinking, and I love love and the feeling of love and goodness. That's all good stuff. But I think we've constructed as humans a lot of human-like entities to try to describe source that are way beyond what source is sharing, that are human.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, and I think it does help people. I get it, but I don't want to get so stuck in that and so afraid of humanity. There's so many people and spiritual. I've met so many of these people in the last few years. We don't talk about politics at all. We cannot talk about politics. It's not spiritual. We can't talk about that. That's 3D. I don't live in 3D. I live in 12D. And I'm looking at you in physical, and you're kind of looking like you're living in 3D to me, because here we are walking around as human beings. And I love what the stream says. We chose to come here. Our souls chose to come and have this physical human experience.
Yeah.
Not to come here and detach from it and be off in la la land, and other dimensions all the time. I've experienced other dimensions, and it's cool because it's so different. But I understand that it's my mind creating something that I can understand to interpret what that is. I get that. And there's not a lot of value in that, other than knowing that there's more going on than just what's here in physical. That's great. But really what's beyond physical is consciousness. It's thought. It's intelligence. It's the intelligence that created us. That's what the stream is. And if we want to make it something more than that, I don't think there's any judgment from them around that. But for me, that was kind of a turnoff. So when you tell people,
I think there's a big question here. Maybe big is probably too large a word. There is a significant question. Let's put it that way, because I don't want to build it up too much. And to me, the significant question is this: is the person who is talking in terms of fairy dust and unicorns and so forth, are they dependent upon the unicorns and the fairy dust, or is that simply an expression of how they're feeling? If it's an expression of how they're feeling, great.
Yeah, I think when I say that, I'm talking about people that I have encountered that want to just be there.
Yeah, it's like they're dependent on it. It's got to be that and nothing else. And like that's not positive.
It says, something's going wrong in my life right now. I've got to go get my XYZ crystal, because if I don't have this crystal, it's going to go bad. And there's nothing wrong. I have a crystal right here. There's nothing wrong with crystals. Nope. But don't depend on anything external.
Exactly.
To raise your vibration. I had Erica Lynn on my show yesterday, and she's graduated boot camp. She had this great story. It's actually a great episode. She was fantastic on air, and she's really into essential oils. So we did the whole second segment just on essential oil. And I learned this. It was a really informative episode. So go listen to the Erica Lynn version of my podcast, episode of my podcast, because it was really good. And she talks about how it raises her vibration. And she's like, I know that you're not into that. The stream, I said, well, I didn't say I wasn't into that. I do think things can raise your vibration, certainly.
Oh, yeah.
What we want to do in Taya is use our mind to raise our vibration first.
Exactly.
So that if somebody comes along and takes your crystals and takes your oils away, you can still manifest your way back to whatever you want. The stream has said that we can manifest anything in a straitjacket in a padded cell. That our minds are really that powerful, meaning we don't need external tools. We can use them if we want. There's nothing wrong with it. But the power of the mind is so great that these things are just they're enhancers, but they can become crutches. So we just don't want it to be a crutch. That's all.
Good way to describe it, crutches, because that's really what we want to avoid here. If the moment that we're using them as a crutch is the moment that we're really not actually all that high vibe in the first place. We kind of forget that part.
Yeah, I saw.
I'm very high vibe because I've got my unicorns and my crystals and all. No. Are you high vibe, regardless of all that? Put those aside. Are you still high vibe? That's true high vibe.
Love yourself. Do you feel abundant? Do you trust the universe? Really trust the universe?
Yeah.
Or do you trust the universe as long as you're up here? And then as soon as the election comes along and you turn on the news and that makes you plummet your vibration and you're no longer trusting and now you're in fear. And I'm not saying that I'm impervious to that. I have.
No, of course not. I'm not either.
There was something that triggered me not too long ago on television, and it was a political speech, and it triggered me down a little bit. And I stopped, and I said, "Wait a minute. If this is triggering me, I'm already in low vibe. Because if I'm up here, I'm not. First of all, I'm probably not even going to be watching that in the first place. Secondly, I'm not going to be triggered by it. And it just was a sign of my current vibration, and I realized it. And I pulled myself out of it. But I'm like, whoa, that triggered me because of me, not because of what was being offered.
Yeah, I agree. That really is, that to me is what I call the work. Louis D'Souza, who does the Monday show with me, gave me a hard time about that. He said, no, it's play. It's not work, it's play. And I can't disagree with him, because certainly the easier way to look at it and to understand it is that it is play. But it does take let's take it this way. It requires an asserted concentration. You have to actually commit to
Well,
doing stuff.
I refer to Taya as work. I mean, people come in and say, Taya changed my life. It's the best thing. I hear that all the time. And it's great. But I will tell people it's work. And I say that it's work because I have encountered plenty of people who say they want to change their lives. I want to change my life. I don't like my job. I don't like my spouse. I'm alone. I'm sick all the time. I want to change my life. Okay, well, here's what you need to do. Okay, well, I don't have time for that right now. You know, I've got this going on and that, and there's no time. And, you know, I don't want to spend any money on this either. And I don't want to commit to anything. And okay, fine. You know, how much do you want to change your life? Yeah, it is work. And the work becomes play because you get good at it, but you've got to practice it. That's why we call it the Taya practice, because you get better and better and better with practice. And then it does become play. But you go through a period of unlearning all of the crap that we're taught in our current day society that is rooted in fear and in judgment, which is really rooted in fear. So what you've got to unlearn all of the fear-based thinking that we have. And that's why I love the book we were talking about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's all about taking away all of the fear-based templated thinking and learning to be entrepreneurial, and that anybody can be. Anybody can be, even if you've had a, you know, I worked in a corporate job for 20 years. I started out as an entrepreneur, and I actually had a good experience, a learning experience, although I didn't have a great earning experience as an entrepreneur early on. I then wanted just to make money. I was just tired of not making money. And all my friends were graduating college and they were moving into nice apartments and getting cars. I just wanted that. So I went and got a job, and that worked for me for 20 years until it didn't anymore. And I actually was interviewing for my dream job. I'd manifested my way to being the president of the company in my industry that I admired the most. And I was deep enough into the interview process where they flew me to Wisconsin, where I'm going next week, for something totally different, to see a corporate psychologist. And I took all the series of tests and things like that. And I had to sit and do this hour-long interview with a psychologist. And the psychologist is looking at everything, and he looks at me and he says, "You should be self-employed. You should be an entrepreneur." And the interesting thing is that they flew me yet to another interview after that. And then it all fell apart from there, because luckily I didn't get the job, because I probably would be doing that right now and not doing what I'm doing.
Right.
But it was really telling that he was that good, that he ferreted that out. I am so independent and so I'm so not risk averse, that why are you not working for yourself, is what he said. It was a good situation. I'd have to pay him a dime either for it.
But let's take that little thread, because that's an interesting thread. The way you said it was you were so independent that you really needed to be self-employed. And very often, whenever I'll speak for myself, when I thought about self-employment, I wasn't thinking about it in terms of being independent. I was thinking about it more in terms of what can I do? And you raised the question before about purpose of life. That's something I gave a lot of attention to. Spent years trying to figure that out with virtually no success at all until long after I learned about The Secret. Came to realize that it was really about what my passion was. And then my next question is, okay, so what's my passion? Because I hadn't figured that one out either. And all that was just leading me through this whole process of coming to the realization that all I have to do is just figure out what it is I like. But the steps I had to go through to get there were just it was just like this long maze. So if you had stopped me early on and said to me, well, okay, where do you feel about yourself being independent? I would have said, I haven't the faintest clue. I don't know. That wasn't even in my calculus. My calculus was limited to a very small world of what's going to work for me. And I bring all this up to say, I think very often when people are playing with the idea of, okay, so what am I going to do differently as I'm working on raising my vibration. I'm working on getting into that higher flying space, but I also know I have to take this internal stuff and start applying it in some way. I have to take certain action steps. And I don't really know which way to go. I don't really know which steps to take yet. And that confused me for the longest time. I didn't, when I was going through my period, which was after I left corporate, went into self-employed status and stayed there until the crash of 2008 and then beyond. I didn't have anybody to turn to. I mean, lots of people these days talk about having mentors and mastermind groups. I didn't have any of that. I had nobody at all I could ask. But well, put it this way, nobody I would trust. I had lots of people that I knew, but I wouldn't have trusted any of them. They just, I knew I was not going to get good information from any of them. So I was just kind of like lost. I didn't know what to do. And I guess I ask myself often, what would I have said to myself at that time? How would I have, knowing what I know now, how would I have guided myself? And I don't really know what the answer is there. I mean, you mentioned this idea of being independent because that's what the psychiatrist who was asking you questions that day talked about. But how would you have talked to yourself? I mean, I imagine you actually did because you had, your connection to the stream. But I'm not sure what I would have said to myself. What would you say to yourself?
Hmm. It was always sort of like I had a foot in each world. I had a foot in the I can do anything, I'm independent, I know what I'm doing world, and then I had that foot in God, I make so much money, so much money coming in, and it's just it was just such a lifestyle that you get addicted to, and then my ego was addicted to the title. I was told growing up that I was going to be a ditch digger. My older brother was like second in his class, and he was a CPA, and my younger sister was first in her class. She's an attorney. I was a middle child, was not a good student, and I was just written off as you're just going to be a ditch digger. And I had this mission to prove all of them wrong via my ego, and this belief via the stream that I could do it. And that created the perfect scenario for me to go on into a career where I made more money than both of my siblings.
Yeah.
And I remember my father coming to visit me in Seattle. And he saw my house and my car. He's like, "Oh, my rich son, my rich son." And he was so proud. And I told him I was quitting my job. I was a channel. I mean, all that just blew him away. He's like, "What's the channel thing? What are you doing?" And he thought I lost my mind. And I think he still thinks I lost my mind. And I'm okay with that. But hey, he's like, "How are you doing? How's that going?" I was going, "Great." "Okay, good." Whatever that is you're doing is great. So it was this, I had this little battle for, a good decade or more. And that I had the stream saying, come this way, you can do anything, you can do all this, don't listen to what everybody's saying. But then my ego was holding me in a space that I didn't really want to be in, big salary, big title, proving everyone wrong, being respected by all these people who didn't even know me, which didn't, they respected me because I was their boss. I used to tell people that, my employees always laugh at my jokes. I could tell the worst joke and everyone just, I always thought that was interesting. I'm like, what I'm saying is not even funny. These people aren't my friends. They work for me, and I'm being treated a certain way because I'm the suit that's walking through. And after a while, in the beginning, it really fed my ego, and then it got really old.
Sure.
Not doing it for me anymore. And that was around the time that I saw the psychologist that said, you need to be self-employed. And it was really a turning point for me because I had already interviewed for the pinnacle job and it didn't come to be. And then I thought, this is just a clear sign from the universe that this is not what I truly want to do. I had really become successful in my career, helping people be successful with the law of attraction. That's how I became so successful. I taught efficient salespeople how to do really, really well. And I was good at business. I could find ways to be successful. In the first 10 years, I worked for these two guys that owned all of these locations in this company. And they would, every year, they would make my bonus more and more difficult to achieve. And I lived a lifestyle that required me to make my bonus to pay my bills. I always lived above my means. And when you're in that kind of job, it's actually helpful to do so as long as you can meet it. So living above my means when I was younger was a really good thing. And so I would figure out how to max out that bonus every single time they changed it. And they retired and they sold their locations to the corporate entity. And I thought I was going to get fired because I was making so much money. But the bosses that I had told the new bosses that he figures out how to make money no matter what. He figures out the loopholes. Every time he maxes out a bonus, we make it more difficult, and he maxes out again. And that was, I believe that was rooted in my belief that I could and I would, and I gambled on that by living a lavish lifestyle. So
yeah, I'm trying to imagine applying that. There's no way I could have applied that in my own life. It wouldn't have fit me at all. I mean, it fit you perfectly, I'm sure. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. I'm simply saying it. I'm asking that question again. What would I have told myself if I tried to tell myself that? I know that wouldn't have worked. So what would have worked? I can see myself saying, okay, well, you already have some sense of the value of what we'll call positive thinking. So you got that much. You aren't really sure how to apply it because when you tried to apply it earlier, it really just washed out entirely. So we need to find some way to improve that. But beyond that, how would I have explained to myself the value of staying high vibe? I don't know if I could have
That's
done that.
why when you talk, there are people that are into law of attraction, and maybe some people that watch this and listen to this podcast that aren't into spirituality.
Mm.
But law of attraction is about energy. And really what spirituality is the consciousness that is beyond physical, that is the creator of all that is, the intelligence, something designed us. And that's where atheists drive me insane. I understand denouncing religion. I did that years and years and years ago, organized religion. But that's where Bill Maher really sets me off, because I think he's such a smart guy, but then he stops at being an atheist and doesn't allow for the idea that there's an intelligence beyond physical that created all of this. What decided that we needed 2 lungs and a liver, and that we needed to breathe air and eat food and drink water, and then we would be born into this environment? That's, what decided that? How do you explain that? And atheists can never explain that. So to me, spirituality is just that consciousness that is beyond physical, and it's eternal. And there's a set of beliefs that you just have to believe or not. But believing a certain level of belief beyond physical is the only way to really power law of attraction. Because what's creating for you then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you believe in law of attraction and you want to, and most people get in a law of attraction usually for money. It seems to be money, and then relationships, and then health. Some variation.
Yeah, those are the big 3. Yeah.
3, and they want to manifest money. They see people like them, a minority of people, but they see people that are like them that are getting what they want. Beyonce comes from nowhere and she's Beyonce. Oprah comes from nowhere and she's Oprah. How do they do that? There's got to be some magic behind that. There's got to be. What is that? It's the belief. I saw a video, I shared it, of Oprah early on when she was starting her very first talk show.
You mentioned this to me, yeah.
I love that video. Go find it. If I find it again, I'll share it with you so you can share it with everybody. And this guy is saying, well, what if your show is not successful? And she says, I am not defined by my show. My show will be fine. I will be fine if my show isn't fine. I loved it. I'm like, oh my God, she got it so early on. That's why she made the secret what it is because she was truly an aficionado of law of attraction before all that. Yeah. She got it early on. There's something in her where she got it. Some people just have that where they just get it. On a level, I just got it. But I stifled myself in ways too that I've shared. So you cannot remove the spiritual aspect from law of attraction, but understand that it doesn't have to be fairies and unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
You don't have to, wear antlers, or whatever. You don't have to do that stuff. It's just that there's a consciousness that's beyond physical, and we have to use our imaginations to comprehend that and know that there's an energy, a force of energy that is going to bring the things that we want if we trust it. And then I created Taya to give people the tools to allow themselves to come to trust it. We're detuning fear. We're detuning judgment. We're allowing our natural source connection through meditation to be realized more often. We're finding ways to trust, and we're finding milestones, little things that we can manifest that allow us to believe and trust more, so we can manifest the next level, the next level, the next level, the next level.
I think you're right that really it is about the spiritual side, because while you were talking, it all kind of fell in place. What would I actually say to that self, that 25, 30, 35-year-old self, just starting out and going into that kind of downward spiral that was quite painful? I think what I would say is you've long wanted to know what the answers to the eternal questions are. I mean, I quit the church at age 14. I had been asking questions like that for quite some time and been quite rejecting. I mean, my own bout with atheism was basically a rejection of religion more than anything else. And I now realize what I probably needed to know was you can trust what you're getting whenever you go inside. Even if you're getting nothing, you can still trust it, which would have sounded really crazy. But if I had continued to just talk with myself along the lines of learn to trust what's inside, I think it finally would have started to make sense to me, because that's what's made sense to me now. That's what's made sense to me over the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years that I've been doing the podcast, actually.
Well, and trust the universal process of creation, which is vibrational flow up and down, positive and negative. Let the negative inspire new creation, which is positive, and understand that that flow is always going to be. And when we go down in vibrational flow, if we let the obstacle stop us, then we're never going to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. I love all that. I just knowing myself, I think if I had given myself the message I was just talking about, the rest of that would have come so easily to me, just because of who I am, just because of the way I'm put together. In my case, I just needed to know that I don't have to rely on what other people are telling me. I certainly I do a podcast where I talk to a whole bunch of experts who give me all this great information, but I'm the one who takes
Well,
it in.
you have to connect the dots for yourself. And
Yeah.
anybody, any intelligent person has to connect the dots for themselves, because you can't trust it unless you connect the dots for yourself.
That's right. Exactly.
It's scientific, right? You're going to do a little experiment. You're going to see if you can manifest something easy, and then you can manifest something a little more complicated. And as long as you're building trust as you go, your manifestational tower is going to continue to be built. But when you get to that level, I can manifest this, but I can't manifest that. One of the things, and this isn't from the stream, this is an Abraham thing, and I loved what Abraham said. It's true. It's easy to manifest a castle as a button.
As a button, yeah.
Yeah, and that's an Abraham thing. So I love that, because that even brought clarity for me, because I realized from that I was the one making the difficult stuff difficult. And there were things in my life that I manifested that I would have never imagined that I would have been able to manifest. And I have to look at that and take that manifestation now and layer it on every area of my life. And I actually have done that now. I have manifested. I'm not in it anymore, but last year, this time, I had my physical body was in the best shape of my life. And it's sort of like I did it, and now I don't care so much, but I did. I had this great body that I couldn't imagine that I had at 50, 51, when I had been significantly overweight for most of my life. I used to weigh 300 pounds. So I did that. I manifested a true love relationship. I have manifested healing from chronic back pain. I have manifested excellent health. I've manifested money. I've manifested a business. I kind of feel like I've done it all now. So now I can teach other people how to do it, even if I'm not, perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. And I don't want to be perfect, because I understand the value in not being perfect. I learn new lessons all the time in not being perfect.
Well, this has been quite the discussion and quite the exploration, particularly since we didn't actually call the stream in. So we'll save that for 2 weeks from now when you're on.
They're going around. They're guiding this. They guided us out of the political discussion.
I guess they probably did. That's good. It all pays off. It all works. Just a reminder to everyone, if you're not using the LOA Today app, please use it to, among other things, use the form where you send in questions that give the stream a question to answer. We'll be glad to include it on the next show that the stream is on. Plus, you have all the other goodies that are on there, including a meditation by the stream. And there's also Dan Mangane's Money Game and Cindy Chavez's lovely Magician's Guide to Soulmate Success, and so much more. So, download and share that app. It's available for both Android and iPhones, and you just go through the App Store or the Play Store. So, David, we'll be missing you next week, but looking forward to having you again the following week, and we'll just carry on this conversation and see if anybody's sending in questions. And if not, I may just talk to the stream myself next time. I just might do that.
Yeah, no, it was a really good conversation. I appreciate it. I meant to tell you too that I'm going to give you a link to put on your app. If they want to take the free Taya masterclass.
Oh, good.
You can take the masterclass for free. Because I talk about Taya on here all the time, and I realize I don't really give people a path to learn more about that, the masterclass.
All right. Well, good stuff. All right. Well, then thank you very much. Thank you to our live stream. Thank you to our podcast listeners. And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody. Cue the music.